Hi, Krista. How are you?
Hi, Johnson. I'm very well. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so glad to hear from you and to speak to you for the first time face to face. We've been communicating virtually, so it's nice to see your face.
Likewise. Yeah, we always have kind of a picture from someone, and it's different in original.
Yeah, isn't it? Our sense of
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
And I'm just going to wait for a few minutes for people to tune in live on this conversation that we are having today about the power of healing, really, about holistic healing, mind, body, emotions, and also the power of frequencies, not just frequency from our um, environment, but also our thoughts, our internal frequencies, our emotions that we choose to cultivate. And so, for those of you who are just joining in, my name is Chong, of course, and I'm having a truth, wisdom, and freedom conversation here with Christa Kranhert. Is that how you say your name, Kranhert?
Yes, that's
Is,
pretty
is it?
close.
Okay, that's my German.
Yes, very good.
um, and I'm joined here with Christa Kranhert, who is a natural doctor or naturopath. She's also a health specialist, a psycho-oncologist, and she's also a professional trainer for doctors and therapists for psychobiology, pleomorphism, nutrigenetic, and epigenetic work as well. So basically, what Christa does is that she integrates the biological, the psychological, the social, and also consciousness, the spiritual. She is a co-author of a book called The Process-Oriented Cancer Therapy that was released back in 2001. And you also had your own journey and battle with breast cancer. Maybe we start there because I like to start easy.
Everything is easy, Johnson. All is good. Well, yes, I came across the teachings of Dr. Harmer in 2000. So after I was already very familiar with biology and pleomorphism, which says every microbe is able to change its shape. So today we call it mutation. But the truth is, it's changing its shape upwards but downwards as well. So it can go as a so-called pathologic bacteria, but it can go down as well to a normal, healthy little particle. So that's pleomorphism. So I knew that already and came across Dr. Harmer, where he could explain every disease as an emotional event. And the emotional event, we today can categorize it. So disease, it's a really good word in English. This is, we are not in ease with something. So we perceive a situation and we don't like what we see. So that is creating an emotional event for us. And that emotional event is then reacting in our body, like what could I give you as an example? I recently heard someone saying, with the situation in the whole world, the saliva just stops. And the salivary gland reacted to it immediately. So he had to drink plenty of water because he started to swallow because everything was dry. And the salivary gland had the conflict carried out from what he thought is happening in his life.
Well,
So
that's a beautiful thing that you're sharing right now that maybe a lot of people have not accepted as part of the mainstream, this sense
yes,
that we are not separate and that we cannot be divorced from our external and our internal environment. And before we jumped on this call, we were talking a little bit about the nature of frequencies, right? So yes, we have frequencies around us in our environment that are affecting us perhaps in harmful ways, like we know EMFs, and also with 5G and all of these other things that we can't see, but they exist. But we also have our inner frequencies, which is very much the realm that I'm interested in, the kind of frequencies we generate from our thoughts, our words, our emotions, our behaviors. And we even have this in our language, even the way that we express things. For example, someone saying like, oh, I feel like they stabbed me in the back, or I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders, or there's a frog stuck in my throat. Oh, I have butterflies in my stomach, right? These are all things that are signaling that an emotional event, like what you're saying, is very much tied into an energetic experience, which could then manifest into what you're saying, physical dis-ease or disease, or something chronic over a long period of time. So maybe you can tell all the viewers a little bit more detail about how the manifestation of something that is more intangible, like the frequency of a thought, a behavior or emotion, how does that go from this into disease?
Well, it happens straight away. The moment you think it, we can say it happens on 3 levels. It happens on what you perceive in the psyche. It happens then in your emotional reaction to it, and it manifests straight away as a reaction in the body. There is no gap. There is no time in between. It happens on all 3 levels at the same time. And frequency, we have to see, everything is frequency. We appear as frequency in a field of frequency. There's nothing else than frequency.
Okay, break that down a little bit more. We appear as frequency within a field of frequency. And so if you had to describe what frequency is, how would you describe that in very basic terms?
Well, it is like wobbling. So our eyes are not able to see that. Some people perhaps can that. But the field of consciousness, the field of awareness, is a constantly moving field. It never can stay still. And now, as you know, waves can go fast or slow, high or low. And that's then the difference, So for example, we know from some therapists in Germany, they call the COVID-19 is a frequency of 5.5 to 14.5 hertz. So now, if we would vibrate on that frequency, we most likely would develop the symptoms of it. If you vibrate higher, that doesn't affect you because you don't have the resonance in that frequency. So you can't separate any frequency. Everything is frequency in different forms, combinations, fast, slow, high, low, all of that.
Yeah, if we think about radio stations, I kind of think of ourselves like we're all these little towers receiving information all the time and giving out information.
Yes.
And what we receive in is really what we're making our radio station, how we're taking care of the body with food, with diet. Is your radio station, like broken and, there's things hanging off the building? it how's the paint on the wall? Like, how do we take care of that, right? And so we're all these little towers giving and receiving frequency, which is a wonderful way to think about it. And so maybe we can give more perspective onto like what healthy frequencies are in the human body. Like, what is a healthy human body vibrating at? And what is an unhealthy human body vibrating at? And also talk a little bit about cancer cells, since you specialize a lot with cancer and you yourself have triumphed and battled over cancer and what that's vibrating at. And then you told us for sure what COVID vibrates at. So give us some perspective on the frequencies.
Well, in my world, looking from as well as a spiritual perspective, there is only consciousness, there's only vibration, there's only frequency. So per se, there is nothing right or wrong. Okay. our system, our biological system, is a localization of awareness and focus out of the whole field. I would like to give you an example for that. If you imagine consciousness as a totally empty room, okay, just as a picture, and to make it simple. So the room is totally empty and is in peace and happy and has its constant movement, you know. And out of the blue, there enters, consciousness puts the focus into the room and manifests and collapses the waves into particles and creates, let's say, a table. Okay, then we have consciousness, and in consciousness the table appears made out of consciousness. It's the same so-called matter. Okay, it is made out of consciousness. So now you look at that, and the moment you say, okay, I want to know how that table feels, and you would let go the awareness of your wholeness, and you would go just only into the consciousness of the table, and you would forget about the field where you come from, then you would have a separate self of a table. Okay.
So I would describe this as individuation versus a sense of connection to the integrated whole. So another way that I can think about this is that if we are little drops of water, and this is something you hear a lot of the Buddhist teachings talk about, and the Buddhist teachers and masters, they talk a lot about us as human beings as individual drops of water within this whole ocean that we're in, this ocean of consciousness. Right? And oftentimes when we are thinking about our own selfish needs and wants and desires as an individual, we forget that we are connected to the other drops of water in the ocean. Like, I'm connected to Christa, I'm connected to the people who are watching this, right? Yes. And you're so basically, to summarize, tell me if I'm right. So you're saying if because, when you talk about consciousness, it can get a little bit like, whoa, what's going on? So to touch or to experience ourselves, right, we are in fact mindfully forgetting that we are part of the whole by separating from the source of all things.
Yes.
And that's how we experience ourselves.
Yes, with perception and sensation. And that's now the important part to the frequencies. As we only think we are separate and we are not, we are able to sense all other frequencies around us just in knowing, not consciously, but we are able to sense it. And our body has sensors. So for example, you get 3 cups of coffee as a simple example, okay? So you start with the first coffee and your sensors analyze straight away how was the mindset of the man who planted the seeds of the coffee beans? How did he treat the coffee beans? Was it a fast pushing growth, or was it a slow loving growth? So, and because we are able to sense that, our personal consciousness now separates all the informations, which is frequency, and decides then what to incorporate into our body and what is it we want to let go, because our body, inside of your body, it opens in the mouth and it goes out the anus. Everything that is in between is not your body. It's not incorporated yet. It is still in the pathways of looking, analyzing, is that something I need for my personal path or not? Some people are not able to let go, so they store that and get constipated.
Yeah.
Others don't analyze it. They say, oh, there is something coming, and straight away they got diarrhea. Okay, something is wrong in that information. I don't want to have that information, and it goes out.
Yeah, and it's like these things that we already know, like mama's home cooking. I can taste the love in her food, right? That's what this is bringing up for me, right? And home cooked meals are always so much more lovingly prepared because of the intention that you're putting into the food, and we can really taste it, right? Everyone has this experience at one point or another in their life. And sometimes when you go to a restaurant, when they're just making it for work and they're doing it back to back to back to back, it might be, you know, the cook is frustrated, right? And they might be angry and they might be fighting with someone in the back in the kitchen. And so you can almost taste this in the food. And so what you're saying is that the body has receptors, right, in the intestines, in the gut, that is receiving information, the frequencies of, let's say, negative thoughts or conflict or drama or trauma even, and it gets stored in the gut. So then how do we go about releasing or resetting the frequencies in here so that we can have optimal health? So we're not constipated, we don't have diarrhea, we don't get cancers. So what are some of the things that we can do?
That's what we do, and Healy supports us in that regard. The future has to be to listen and to be with our bodies. You know, the last 100 years, we are trained to listen to experts. Like, if you don't know what's going on when you have diarrhea, you have to go to see a doctor, an expert, and he tells you what is wrong with you. And then he doesn't tell you what is wrong with you. In these days, he says, you got diarrhea. Here is the remedy that stops the diarrhea. And now someone who is not conscious is using it, but what does it do? If the sensoric system said there is something toxic in it, you have to have diarrhea to let it go. You don't want to be in touch with that frequency. You have to let it go. So the last thing you want to do is to stop your diarrhea, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, what you're saying sounds so simple, but it's so, but yet it's so, it's for some reason we've just been disconnected from the pace of our modern living. And if you look at, for example, I was just thinking about my dog as you were talking. When she has an upset stomach, she goes and she sniffs out the patch of grass that she needs, and she starts to eat that, and she doesn't eat for a day. Or I've seen her do this a few times because she's tuned in to what her body needs. And why are we, as such intelligent mammals, so disconnected to what it is that we need a specialist to tell us to, you know, listen to our bodies?
Absolutely. which is, you know, so I don't want to take the word stupid, but kind of it is. And we need to see that we are manipulated, we are brainwashed, we are pushed into a situation with an overload of information. And because of the overload of information, we always have one situation and hundreds of different thoughts, dogmatic views, stuff on it. So a human being going now and wants to Google, Mr. Google, and finds 100 answers, and they are not connected to their needs and their own frequency, what they need, they get lost. And the doctor, and then when they get lost, they are confused, they can get dizzy. That is vertigo, that is dizziness. I don't know where to go. That's dizziness. And nature tells you, if you don't know where to go, you need to sit still in the desert and to wait until your tribe is coming and pick you up, because you don't know where to go. You see? So every single symptom in your body has a very, very logical and meaningful meaning, and is able to tell you what's going on in your thoughts and in your emotions. And with Healy, for example, resonance, you check with your thumb, and the resonance is checking your field and the field around you, and tells you, I can sense, Healy says, I sense you are at the moment in resonance with that kind of frequency. Have a look at it. So that's
Right.
a teaching tool for us to communicate with ourselves.
So not everyone watching knows what that is, what you're talking about. Since you are a bioresonance therapist and expert and natural doctor, maybe you can talk a little bit about the technology out there that is, what you're talking about, the Healy, and how that is scanning the consciousness and scanning the frequencies that are being emitted from the physical, from the mind, right? The emotions, and how that works. So you're talking about it as using it as a tool, right, for holistic healing. So maybe you can go into that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the technology. If you have really good trained or very well trained English mediumship, those are sitting in a circle once a week, and then they train their senses to ask the informational field what vibration is present at the moment within a person or around a person. Now we have the technology since a couple of years, which this Healy, there are others of course as well, but this one has a sensor, and that sensor is able to pick up the frequency and check with yourself, and gives you an answer about it without you being trained for 60 years sitting in a mediumship circle. Okay. And the longer you need or you use that technology, of course, you get more and more sensitive to your own needs as well.
Yeah. Great. Lovely. Yeah. Because I myself have been trained in energy, right? I work with energy and I work with intuition. Not everyone is tuned in that way, right? And so when you come across something like science, which is sitting in a machine and a device on a phone, on an application, which we're so trained, right, to use on a daily basis, it becomes almost a no-brainer in terms of having that as a support tool. So thanks so much for sharing about that. Let's. I wanted to talk a little bit about the frequencies of certain disorders that we might be that might be appearing a lot nowadays. Like I myself have worked with clients before in the past who have had cancers. You yourself work a lot with cancers. Should we talk about that? I also want to talk about some skin disorders, bone joint disorders, and about the energies sitting behind that, because I love what you said earlier about how every disease sits at a psychosomatic or emotional root. So I know that's very difficult for some people who are very much entrained in the Western conventional way of thought, because then they go, oh, I'm responsible for that. How can I be responsible for this? And this is, very hard to hear sometimes, but we have to take ownership of everything that's happening to us in life, as opposed to, like becoming a victim to the universe, right? So let's talk a little bit about the frequency of, let's say, cancer. What might emotionally cause that?
Okay. I give you
your point of view.
I give you my own experience. So, and before I start with that, I want to say every animal, even the plants out there and us, we are designed to adapt. We are an adaptation system in the fluid. So we are able to adapt all the time. If it's cold outside, we start shivering to create energy to make us warm. If it is hot, like now, I just had to take it off a little bit, I start sweating to cool my skin to get cooler inside. So we don't have an immune system. We are not immune. All frequencies are going through us, coming from us, out and in, and we adapt to it in any given moment. Okay, there is no one single second we are not adapting. Now, in 2000 and when was it? Oh God, it's kind of a while ago. It was in 2005, December 2005. I was in Germany. I was very well known in Germany. I was working with a lot of doctors, therapists. We gave talks, and I was together with good friends. And one day I got the information that those friends are going somewhere else and we will not have contact any longer. And I got that over an email. And that was a second where it hits me so much on my emotional level that my normal rhythm of sympathetic and parasympathetic state switched off, and I turned into the fight and flight sympathetic state. I didn't want to accept that situation. So I perceived something, I looked at it, I didn't like it, and I didn't want it. And my whole being came into fight and flight. What can I do? What happened? Why is this happening? Have I done something wrong that they go there? So, it was an overload of questions, but at the same time, I knew my breast ducts started to react in the same time, and my cortex in the brain started to build like a dart, what is that called? A dart.
Shooting darts, yeah, a dartboard.
A dart, thank you. A dartboard, because that happens then in the brain area that is connected to the organ. I got this ring, it started this ring. I knew that, I didn't see it. I knew it because I was trained in biology. So I knew there are the rings starting, and I knew that the breast ducts withdraw. They got, we call it in biology, a cell minus, because it wanted to open up the gateways then when they are coming back, because they have been close to my chest, to my breast, and they are coming back, I can feed them, support them, embrace them.
Right. So when did you get diagnosed for breast cancer?
That was the first day. That was the situation. So I didn't go to see the doctor because I'm the naturopath. I knew what's going on, and I knew I have to get out of that sympathetic state. But if the sympathetic state is active, as long as it is active, the brain, the thought patterns, the overwhelming thought patterns, and the organ are reacting at the same time. So I knew the longer that will be, the worse this whole situation will be. So I knew I have to stop the sympathetic state. So what I did, because I knew that, I knew what's happening, what I was doing, I used a watch, a clock, and anytime when there was the overwhelming thinking, I went into meditation with an Om, because I needed to stop thinking. And that took me about 10 days. I couldn't get out earlier, but I knew I have to. And for 10 days, I was in the sympathetic state. I didn't feel any symptom on the breast, because in the sympathetic state, in the fight and flight, you have no symptoms. You only have symptoms in the regeneration phase. That's new as well. That's 180 degrees of what we think it's happening. So after 10 days and hundreds of hours of sitting and meditating, I woke up in the morning and I was sitting on my bed, and I had like a reunion with myself. There was my own shadow in front of me that just reunited with me. And in that second, my sympathetic state switched to parasympathetic, and I was in peace. It was okay. I accepted the situation in my life, and I was happy, even it was different than before.
Yeah.
And then the breast cancer started, because in the healing phase, it happens in the healing phase. So you get a migraine. So because the areas that are affected in the healing phase, they get inflammation and an edema around it. So I had a little edema in the brain, and I had 2 inflammation spots on my breast.
Okay. And then, so what was the length of time of that process of moving from the breast cancer to then alleviating it so that the root was gone?
Yeah, because the root was only 10 days. The regeneration is 10 days as well.
Okay.
Everything in life is rhythm.
Right.
There is in rhythm. As long as you are conflict active, the body needs the regeneration in conflict passive, in going into vagatone, where you are
Sure.
more tired,
Sure.
you are more hungry, you gain weight. In the first 10 days, I lost 6 kilograms.
Yeah. So it was rather quick for you because you caught it pretty early, and also you were aware. Yeah. You were connected to your awareness and your presence. Yes. That's beautiful. Not everyone has that. So we can almost imagine if someone's been holding on to a grudge for 20 years, how much more difficult that would be. And so really what I can glean from your story is that how important it is to take care of our emotional and what we deem as important and what we value. And it's in the shamanic cultures where they say that emotion is not what we want, right? Emotion is kind of the thing that we're looking to master, to conquer. And it's really the feelings and sensations that we want to embody more, and that there's a differentiation between the two. Because when we get stuck in an emotional state, right, it's the sensation of anger passing through, kind of like how fire is very naturally just blazing, right? But it's a story that we tie into the sensation. And then that story perpetuates the emotional state. And then that is what causes the other things to happen, right? So we have to differentiate between the sensorial and holding and grasping and attaching to the stories behind the sensations.
Absolutely.
Someone in the chat is asking a little bit about bones and joints. Yes. So let's talk about that. I myself have experienced a lot of joint stuff, and I can tell you my personal experience about joints, and then you tell me what you see with joints. So with my issues with joints, I come from a performance background. I used to act, and dance and do a lot of physical stuff, right? I did martial arts as a kid, so it was very physical. And I've broken many things. I've sprained my right ankle, my left knee's torn, ACL's gone, meniscus was torn bicep tendon, rotator cuff, all of this stuff, sprained rib, kind of dislocated L1, L2 a little bit, had to pop back in place, all types of bone stuff I've experienced. I've sprained my neck, back in November last year doing some acrobatic things. So I experience anytime my joints experience some sort of pain from doing something, it is because I, on an internal level, am simply doing too much. And then it literally is breaking. And that sounds super, super simple. But every time that happens and I have to go through a state of regeneration, I literally need to stop doing and just be. And so over the years, I've had less joint impact and joint pain because I've learned that I had this emotional pattern of being attached to overachieving, of wanting to become something more than I currently am, which basically meant that I wasn't content with where I was in the current moment. And so if I stopped striving and working so hard, I wouldn't be experiencing this. And on a logical sense, I wouldn't be then jumping up and down on a trampoline trying to flip around and do all these things and then break my knee, right? Because I wouldn't be trying to do so much. And this sounds super, super simple, but that's what I've been tuning into the wisdom in my body to heal that so that I receive less pain. And I also know that the energy of joints and bones is also related to self-criticism, and and that very much is a part of the old Johnson, the old personality that I've had to work a lot on, the perfectionist. So what is the natural doctor diagnosis of the energy of joints and bones? Why do people experience that, like the pain?
So, in evolution, in humans' evolution, the first thing we developed was the digestive system. So the cells were sitting in the ocean, opened the mouth, and the food came in and went out on the other side. So they didn't move; they just waited for the food to come in. So when we started from going from the water to the land, what we needed was movement. So we needed to develop the skeleton, the muscles, the joints, because that gave us the ability to explore the world in a greater radius, right? So if we are able to do so, if we are able to move, if we are able to move the body, to do things, to weight things, whatever we can do with our skeletal and the muscle, we feel great. We are able to move. Now, that is a very, very deep-seated element of our being, to be able to follow someone or to follow the tribe or to walk around to find food to survive. If we are caught up in one place, then our self-esteem drops. Oh, I'm not able to walk forward. Oh, I'm not able to stop. Oh, if you go to the skull, that's an intellectual low self-worth. I should have known better. You should have known better. And any time when we feel we are not good enough, and just what you said, you are a perfectionist, anytime we feel we are not good enough, our cell structure, without going too deep because it's really whole training, our cell structure in the bone and muscle gets a cell minus. It's taken out of it. So to get to we think we are not good enough, and therefore it's taken out. And I give you, or it is the feeling of being stuck. I give you an example. You have an accident. When you have an accident and you are stuck in the car and you can't get out, that would be the real physical experience. How does nature react to it? You start sweating to make yourself slippery, because then you slip easier through the material world. And in that instant, you shrink a little bit. Water is through the sweating flushed out, and you have cell minus. That gives you a faster ability to perhaps escape the stuck situation.
Right. Yeah. So there's of course, there's an innate intelligence at work here.
Yes. So now the moment you start thinking, well, but I am good enough. I am the most perfect, beautiful human being. I can walk. I can move. I can be everywhere I want. That's the switch from the inner tension with the allowance and the being and the accepting. And that starts repair.
Yeah.
The repair of the cell minus. And just one last thing, and that's the crucial part. The healing in the bone and the muscle creates pain. Why? When the bone is thin, it's very easy to get broken when you move, right? Nature says, sit still, don't move. I repair. The swelling opens the vessels for the cells to be rebuilt. It's painful because the swelling, the water, gives a pressure on the nerves. Mm-hmm. But it tells you, sit still. When the repair is done, you are stronger than before. And then you start moving again.
Right. So we have someone in the comments below saying that RT is saying that she gets pain sensations in her right knee sometimes and she can't comprehend it. So what you're signaling or suggesting is that perhaps that pain around self-worth and I'm not good enough, right, that's manifesting, let's say, perhaps in the knee, is that the body is not does not have the space or the time to heal because that particular person is not giving the space and time for it to heal. Is that what you're saying? Or
so we need to give the space and time, of course, but we need to understand the signal as well. So is this person perhaps with the right knee? That's only thoughts, okay? That's not that meant to be for her or the person. You can only ask, do I want to stand up all the time without being humble and kneel down and be a little bit more receptive to something else? So to kneel down is I allow a higher perspective to enter my system as an information, and I open my consciousness to a higher perspective.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You see?
Sure, I guess I can relate this to gestures, right? Human gestures. The body goes through certain gestures. When we placate, when we kneel, we're on our knees, right? Yes. Where this is a gesture of humility. This is a gesture of I'm begging or asking, right? Then there's the different qualities and intentions behind what that gesture could mean, right? And then if we're, and so any issues along the knees, right, have to do with
exactly that.
Your ability to, exactly that. Because the psychosoma, the psychology and the soma, the body, are very much related. So I was speaking with a Jungian psychoanalyst earlier this week, and we were talking a lot about the collective unconscious. And in the collective unconscious, we have the mythos of how we behave as a human species from thousands and thousands of years. And we have collected, and we know this also through the study of epigenetics, which you're also an expert in, is that all of this behavior, right, that this inner ecosystem that we've cultivated through generations and generations, it's in our psyche, whether we know it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not. And so these universal gestures that we have, right, in our bodies, when we experience pain, right there, it is signaling to us that there is something to look at from a greater perspective of, perhaps you might have difficulty receiving help from an authority figure, whether that be a father or mother or government or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And now you're experiencing issues in the knees. Now, there's stuff with the ankles as well. There's things we do with our hands, the way we bow and curl our bodies, or, some people, I worked a lot with physios in the past, and I looked a lot, especially with hips. For some reason, there was a period in time where lots of people came in with hip issues. And if your tail is sticking out a lot, or if it's tucked under, that says something about your relationship to your sexuality, your sensuality, right? Are you giving too much, right? Perhaps in a promiscuous way, or giving too much of your power, or are you tucking under too much because you're afraid of your power and you're trying to lock it down, right? So all of the physical gestures in our posture and the way that we occupy physical space for sure has a direct energetic impact on what you're saying, on the inner life, which then manifests either in a joint, bone, physical thing, or it can manifest in like a cancer, a more, internal thing.
Cancer is always a long-running conflict. We are not designed to hold on a conflict over years. We are designed like animals do. We solve it in 9 months. That's the least. As long as you solve your challenge in 9 months, it's easy to go through. You will have little symptoms, that's fine. You will have perhaps a little headache or a little migraine, that's fine. But it goes fast, we adapt fast, and we lost the ability as humanity to adapt to different situations and to move on. This is why we have so many people with bad posture, with knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain. I can't bear it anymore, but they don't take action to let it go, not either.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about some organ stuff now?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this, but so I lived in Singapore for 6 years, and I worked a lot with Asian women. And I noticed that, especially in Asian culture, where women are encouraged to be more submissive and to not express their truth as vocally as a man would, almost this old mentality of being treated like property, even though legally it's not, but there's still this cultural expectation of what a woman should be, right? I've noticed a lot of Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, thyroid issues, hyper and hypo thyroidism, especially in Asia. I've noticed a lot of gallbladder stuff, and this happened across the board. And so can you speak a little bit to, if you observe there are certain cultural behaviors that lead to an emotional pattern within an individual, right? Does that play a role? Have you seen that happen a lot culturally across the spectrum?
Well, of course, every culture has different takes on how we should behave or what we should do. I mean, there are many religions about it. The women are treated badly since I would say since nearly ever, because the woman always was the yin energy always was suppressed. The yang energy, the man, the popes, the religion, it's all man-based.
Well, it was always Eve's fault in the garden, wasn't it?
That was it, it was always her. So we as women, we are traumatized already since the beginning of time. So, and the women started then to free themselves for a while, but they turned into rather, how can I say that in a nicely way? They wanted to be the better man. They have been more brutal against men, I think. So you need to see that like a scale,
like a pendulum swinging from side to side.
Yeah. So if one goes in that direction, or the longer to stretch and you stretch and you stretch and you stretch and you stretch, and you then let go, the further it goes.
Right. It's polarity.
To the other side.
Yeah.
So now what we have to do is we have to come back to the equilibrium. We have to balance it out. The man is good and the woman is good. Both is equal. We need both. We need the activity and we need to be receptive and to kneel down and to ask for help if we think we are not able to cope with the situation. Okay. So now with the thyroid hormones, they create energy flow in the body. And if I think I am not fast enough to achieve something, I can't reach something, I'm not good enough to do what I would like to do, all of that stops the production of the thyroid hormones. It's a conflict by itself, and it creates, now my terms, a cell minus, which creates holes in the thyroid, and then they call that Hashimoto or the immune disease, because they say your own immune system is attacking your thyroid, which is on a biological level not true. The truth is, this woman by itself allows a dogmatic system to control her and to tell her what she's allowed or what she's not allowed to do. And she needs to go into self-empowerment and to say, hey, I'm the same matter of consciousness like you are. We are the same. We are all the room. of consciousness, of awareness, of knowing. And we are the single elements, we are the chair in the room and Johnson in the room and Christa in the room, and everything is in the room.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I love that you're bringing it back to the belief systems that we've inherited consciously or unconsciously. And it all boils down to the kinds of frequencies, like we were talking about, that we're choosing to let come in through us, to us, to happen onto us. And what's really beautiful is that I love how you talk about the immune system. I think that in the West, in conventional medicine, we think of a wall, and here's a castle, and then there's soldiers protecting. And this is the way that we're traditionally taught what the immune system does, right? Yeah. However, you talk about it as an adaptation system. We're constantly deciding and negotiating what frequencies we want to come in and what to come out, and if there's free trade, or if Trump's put up a Mexico border wall, right, to see the passage of energy, basically, right? It doesn't work that way. It's not as black and white as here's the good stuff, here's the bad stuff. Our microbiome, we have so many, we have more bacteria that's not ours than is ours.
It is ours.
Right.
It all belongs to us.
It all belongs to us. But I mean, if we had to individuate like the person, the human, from like the biome, right, the bacteria, then there's a lot that we've allowed to come in to become a part of us. Is what I'm saying. So,
but for a good reason.
Exactly. So we get to negotiate what comes in and out, because we're constantly adapting. And I love that definition or redefinition of the immune system that you have, because if we can think of it in that way, then we're not creating walls and barriers to block and to push out. You hear this a lot with people talking about their relationship to negativity. Like, oh, I don't like that experience, so I'm going to block it out. But that experience may be exactly the medicine you need to grow. Yes. That's the whole point of having frustration and struggle and obstacles like we're facing around the world, so you can create and design in a new way. If you're having issues with business, same thing, create a new way. That's the challenge, but that's also the opportunity for growth here. And to hear you speak about that medically, how people are dealing with their life situation, how that manifests in their body, is, I'm sure, for some people very eye-opening, because we are the creators of our reality with what we choose to harbor inside. So I just we can talk on and on about consciousness and how consciousness manifests our physical health, but I think we've gone way over time. We said 40 minutes, and I think we're close to an hour now.
Oh my gosh. Perhaps one last thing I would like
to
share with you. You see, when the cow's disease came up, I measured that in my nonlinear system with every person who came in, even though they didn't experience the symptoms and the disease, so-called. And I started to be aware of that. It was, 15 years ago. And I thought, what is that? Why is that? And now I understood today, because every media, everywhere on the world, they talk about COVID-19. And if we think about it, every single person has that as an information inside of us, with us. It's in the field. And now we can say, who adapts to it and creates a fearless life in being connected with our true nature and with our own body, and in connecting with each other, like you talking with me, and we share our common wisdom, and other people can do the same, then disease in the future has no chance to manifest in form of chronic disease or cancer or what else, because we solve it. We look at it, we know that's a frequency, that's an information. What are we doing with that information collectively? How do we get out collectively of that information and create something new and beautiful?
Yeah. And I just want to tag on to that since you spoke about that. And one last thing. I mean, what you were saying about changing and choosing the frequencies, we do this all the time anyway without realizing it. When we're watching TV and we don't like what the TV is showing us, we change it to a different program. We might watch a documentary or something, on National Geographic or something more peaceful if you're feeling anxious, right? So we're constantly choosing the kind of frequencies we're ingesting anyway. And there's a whole topic to discuss about the biology of fear, right? And a lot of people are talking about how fear basically exacerbates all that's already there. It's just bringing up to the surface, right? So we don't need to get into that, but we all know that fear does that, right? So if we're choosing to infuse our bioenergetic field with everything that is nurturing and loving and kind, right? So then what is there to defend it against? Nothing, really. It's really our own ignorance that we need to protect ourselves from. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we as humanity need to understand and return to the roots of this natural wisdom that we all have inside.
There was never something to defend, and there will never be something to defend. It always will be an information, and how we perceive it and what we do with it, how is our ability to cope with an information and to create something beautiful with it. And if something fearful comes around, try to hold the fear. Try to hold it for 2 days. That's a practice I do with my client. Hold that fear, please. And then they have to admit they can't if they want to.
Yeah. They have a similar practice in the Tibetan Tantra, in the Dzogchen. It's called feeding the inner demon. So oftentimes it's the Western mythos. We're taught to fear the demons under the basements in the closet, the monsters in the basement, right? So we're taught to fear that versus to take care of them, to nurture them, because there's a reason they exist. They're there to show us something, to teach us something. And so there's this practice also in the ancient, Tibetan Tantra to take care of your enemies, your perceived enemies, because at the end of the day, when you take care of them, you realize they aren't your enemies.
That's it.
They're your teachers.
Yes.
Right. So at the end of the day, there is no negativity. There's no positivity. It just is all expanse, like you said, information space.
Perception and sensations. That's it. Thoughts, perceptions, sensations happening in the field of consciousness that we are a part of.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking this time. I can talk with you for hours. If you guys are interested in sharing this, please share this with others. And also, I know Christa actually through the Healy, which is this bioresonance frequency therapy device. It's actually an FDA approved medical device. And for those of you who are in America and want to find out more, because it's launching in America May 1st, there's a whole bunch of webinars. I'll be doing one also on May 1st, Australia time, 10 a.m., which is actually April 30th in America, 5 p.m. Western time, Pacific, and 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to jump on April 30th, just send me a message and I will be more than happy to share more information about the future of frequency in terms of healing ourselves from these stories that we keep telling ourselves.
That's it.
And Christa's part of this beautiful community. And yeah, it's just such a pleasure to be talking to you.
Likewise, Johnson. And as we say in my field of specialists, what we know and the truth is only if someone is open to receive. And it was a pleasure to talk to you today, Johnson.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Take care.
I'll talk to you soon. All righty.
Talk soon.
Bye now.
Bye. Bye.